4 easy steps keep food safe.
Clean, separate, cook, and chill. Clean,
Keep hands and utensils clean.
separate,
Keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood away from other food.
cook,
You can't tell it's done by how it looks. Use a food thermometer.
chill.
A 40-degree fridge keeps bacteria from spreading.
Clean, separate, cook, and chill.
For more information, visit befoodsafe.gov. Be Food Safe from USDA.
If you've ever taken an iready test in the early 2010s, you've been a victim to this insidious video's catchy slogan. You're entitled to emotional compensation through the watching of this video. This FDA show tune has been ringing in my head for years, along with Abe's Apple Tree or The Big Stick, one of the two. And just what is iready? It's described as an online program for reading and or mathematics that will help your student's teacher determine your student's needs, personalize their learning, and monitor progress throughout the school year. But for any elementary school student who's used this program, iready is its own form of insanity. Lessons are often prescribed based on the iready diagnostic, an adaptive assessment that adjusts questions to suit a student's needs. Each item a student sees is individualized based on their answer to the previous question. For example, a series of correct answers will yield slightly harder questions, while a series of incorrect answers will result in slightly easier questions. And that's not to mention that the fact as you grow older, the questions on the diagnostic don't change. So you could be reading the same articles, watching the same videos, and listening to the same audios for about 5 years. The whole idea is to make personalized learning easier for teachers. However, my elementary school teachers took it a step further and incentivized it in order to benefit students who had lower levels. And I say this because when I was in 5th grade, I was actually thrilled to be taking my last iready diagnostic. The test is horrific, but I was taking it, and the teacher mentioned that anyone who gained 30 points would be invited to a pizza party. For a 5th grader, that's a hefty prize. But when it comes to iready, there's a cost hidden around the corner. As I said earlier, the more correct answers you get, the harder the questions will become. However, that's just with the questions. When raising your rank in iready, a system that scores from AA to H, or from kindergarten to 8th grade, the progression is based on your understanding of that level of education. So the problem comes when incentivizing raising your rank. Personally, I was a level H in 5th grade, and since 8th grade is the highest level in iready, I could not raise my rank as easily as others could. So there comes an issue when your peer, who's a level D and moves up to F with a point value of over 100, but you're stuck at your level with an increase of only 27 points. For a child, it might feel like you're stagnant or progressing slower than others, when really you shouldn't even be using the program. There's no point and no progress to be had. Notwithstanding, the program did help me in a few aspects of my life.
Rise, 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 overrun.
But that's not the only program that was popular during the 2010s. Accelerated Reader was a website known for its quizzes. The student would read a book on the database, answer some questions, and get points. The purpose of Accelerated Reader was to provide personalized reading practice, which seems to be a commonality for most of the programs during this time. But you've got to wonder why. Before the rise of the literacy programs in the 2010s, there were the education reforms of the 2000s. As lawmakers soured on the No Child Left Behind Act, concerns about over-testing and how tests were used dominated public conversation about education. The annual tests required by the Act, and more specifically the ways that they were being used to evaluate teachers in schools with increasing in prominent frequency, became a focal point of significant backlash that didn't fall neatly along party lines. At a glance, No Child Left Behind, NCLB, was the main law for K-12 general education in the United States from 2002 to 2015. The law held schools accountable for how kids learned and achieved. The law was controversial, in part because it penalized schools that didn't show improvement. And since the population of students in schools were diverse and often at different levels, what better way to guarantee improvement than with a program whose purpose is personalized engagement and ensured results? However, No Child Left Behind has been replaced by Every Student Succeeds Act, which aims to provide an equal opportunity for disadvantaged students, including those who get special education. But this means little in the face of the fact that the United States has cheated many students out of a rightful education, Only 35% of America's fourth graders read proficiently, and access to educational opportunity and literacy in the United States remains overwhelmingly defined by race, socioeconomics, and ethnicity. The unspeakable toll we inflict on children through systemic biases and behaviors amounts to denial of access to the science for those who need it most. Where is the urgency to act on policies and empirically derived practices on the science of reading? All this amounts to the literacy treatment that we in the United States have dispensed to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. The quality of education in the United States has always been a controversial topic. As there are few laws on the federal level, most of the jurisdiction comes down to the state's own policies, which is turning out to be a problem in it of itself when you look at Florida. Recently, Ron DeSantis has ruled against AP African American Studies to be taught in the state, as well as Ron's law about learning about critical race theory. He wrote that critical race theory teaches kids to hate our country and to hate each other. It's state-sanctioned racism and has no place in Florida schools. However, it's ironic saying that when there is already state-sanctioned racism, banning these books and theories will not stop them from existing. All it does is warp conceptions about them. Nonetheless, we're focusing on literacy programs in the 2010s. Though program might not be the right name. The Electric Company was a TV show that first aired in 2006 on PBS, a children's show meant to help kids with reading comprehension and vocabulary. The show is somewhat similar to Sesame Street in that it has undeniable roots in Black culture. As a reboot series to the 1971 version, The Electric Company was first launched with the likes of Morgan Freeman, Lee Chamberlain, Bill Cosby, Rita Moreno, Judy Gilbert, and Skip Hinnant. The original show was meant to address the illiteracy program in the 1970s, so it's ironic how the rebooted version was also an attempt to combat the same issue only 40 years later. It sort of shows the ineffectiveness that these programs are having. Though adult and child literacy is an issue for all generations, it's interesting that the issue is so prevalent 40 years later that they had to make several more programs. Next is a show that is the bane of my existence, or was the bane of my existence when I was younger. An interactive series that promoted literacy and spelling. It was so dull and boring that I hated having to wake up in the morning and witness it. Wyatt was my own personal enemy. I don't know what about the CGI character infuriated me, whether it was the theme song or the way he spoke so condescendingly, though you did have to consider he was talking to preschoolers. Either way, he pissed me off bad. I didn't care for how long it took them to ask questions and get responses. I hated whatever story they were going to do for the day, and the only good character was Princess P, and that's because my girl was a sister. Though this video isn't STEM related, Sid the Science Kid also gave the same vibes as Super Y. I can't remember why, but the show annoyed me to no end. The entire experience was so unpleasant. Now, reading Rainbow is something I have both fond and disdainful memories of. It was the tedious thing to watch in elementary school during the library time, but over time, you grew to tolerate it, maybe even like it. The show was meant to address summer loss, also known as the summer slide. A major 1996 study looked at the achievement test scores over summer break. They amalgamated the results of 39 different studies and found that summer loss equaled about 1 month of a grade level equivalent scale, or 1/10 of a standard deviation relative to the spring test scores. Also known as, these kids were losing skills. The idea for the show was to foster a love for reading, rather than a show meant to teach kids about reading over the summer. More of an intrinsic motivation thing, I suppose, trying to teach kids how to read on their own, rather than make the watching of the show a forceful and unpleasant experience. Personally, I remember several good parts from the show, though these moments are contained to the between the lines and the cliffhanger. Honestly, elementary school was its own personal hell. Literacy programs improved it somewhat, and that's only because I was an academic validation sort of kid. We had a school store where you could cash in your AR bucks, and you could guess that our school was sort of obsessed with the progress aspect of the programs. I would rate iready a 7 out of 10, accelerated reading a 8 out of 10, The Electric Company is a 10 out of 10, Super Y a verified 2 out of 10, and Reading Rainbow is a solid 5 out of 10. Thanks for watching, and tell me which one of these programs your school held you hostage for.